All right, we're live. Yep, we're good. What's up, guys? John Sintes here. My man, Cass Kreitlow, and special guest, Taylor Ahern on the Cutternation podcast, number 41. We got a special guest, Lantz Wheeler. But first, don't forget to go out, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check us out on Instagram. We're always going live on there. New vamped website. We'll be adding more apparel and some other stuff on there, too, as well as blog by this smart human right here. You got anything?
No, I just want to hear from Lantz.
Yeah, Taylor, you got anything?
I'm all good.
Dude, I'm excited to learn from the master over here. So without further ado, Mr. Lantz Wheeler. Lantz, how you doing, man?
Good. What's up, guys?
We're doing great. We're doing great. So just start off for the people who don't know you and the guys that do, let everybody know where you're from, where you got started with this, a little brief history, and then we'll jump right into it.
Yeah. I actually got started a little bit later than most. I didn't get into coaching college baseball until I was 29 years old at a junior college, was there for a couple of years, and then on to Lipscomb University in Nashville, followed by 2 years at Louisiana Monroe. Then I left college baseball and got into the pro side with a buddy of mine who's an agent, and it's kind of led me to where I'm at now, which is at Huntington Beach, California, and with the core velocity belt. And with the core velocity belt, that was just 100% by accident. I was actually using it as a babysitter. I strapped my little girl in it while I was doing lessons, and she puts the Jaeger band around her waist, slams into a wall. I got away without child abuse and ended up coming up with a way to create the core velocity belt. So that's where I'm at, guys.
Awesome. Huntington Beach for everybody that's out there. That's great. So you're from the South, right?
Yeah, if my accent didn't give it away, yes. I'm originally from Kentucky, but we'd lived in Nashville on and off for close to 15 years before moving out here to Huntington last July.
That's awesome. Are you going to the ABCA this year?
Yeah, I try to make the ABCA every year. That's one of my favorite conferences, especially when it's at Nashville, because it's such a big draw and it's just great to see everybody. It's
right?
Like-minded guys that are just passionate about growing the game and learning from each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we do plan on going this year, so it'll be awesome to shake a hand and get there in person and listen to you some stuff.
So I saw you first, like I said, in 2015, right? That was 2015 or was that 2016? 2016 in Nashville?
It's been, I guess it has. It's been 2000. One of those two.
One of those
two. I don't know what date it is now, much less when it was then.
Right. How far in, how long ago did you create the core velocity belt?
Well, I actually created the first version back, that would have been 2006. Or 2005. It took me about 10 years of just trying it just to get it right. Then it was released in 2015.
So that would have been that's when you had presented.
Yeah, it was right. Yeah, I had released it in January, and I believe I spoke in Nashville in December. So it was about 11 or 12 months after releasing it.
So what problem did you think you were solving?
Initially, I didn't know. Initially, I just knew that there were so many players that I saw. One thing that I saw was that the higher level players, whether it was a hitter or a pitcher, had one common characteristic, and that was the ability to move through the middle of their body. But it was really difficult for me to teach because often the biggest obstacle in movement is just communication or perception on how you're to move. So to actually put the breadth or the depth of human movement into words was almost impossible. So I was using a lot of cues and found that even though I'd give the same cue to the entire team, I would get 15, 20 different patterns. So I wanted to try to put something to where they could actually feel it, to understand it, and then allow them to put it in their own words. And that was really the ultimate goal of the belt.
I get your emails, and I know that you explain that in many, many ways. So the center, I want you to, can you help us understand more about what you said about moving through the middle, or give us more context to that? Great question.
What I'm really referring to, and really a lot of this stuff that I shared, so much of my philosophy came from Paul Nyman of setpro.com. And I'll give you a brief history of that. I spent so much time on his site because he just forced me. Paul Nyman at setprosports.com.
Is he the big leaguer, Paul Nyman?
No, he's an engineer physicist with no background in baseball. That's the guy that.
Love those guys.
Yeah, you're talking about intent to throw hard and so many of the concepts that are just well known now. This is the stuff that he originally created back in 1996. And I had never heard of him, but I met Derek Johnson when he was at Vanderbilt, and he said, hey, I highly recommend you check out this site. So I started watching it so much that, man, I was up to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning taking notes, where I got accused of watching porn by my wife, if that tells you what kind of problem I had. So I said, yes, I'm watching porn, but let's just call it pitching porn. He was the one that introduced it to me. So when you ask about the center, what I'm referring to is just the pelvis, and it's the center mass. It's below the belly button and at the top of the thigh. It's not the waist. That's a mistake a lot of people make, is they associate the waist and the pelvis are the same, but they're just as different as the nose and a big toe. The waist has nothing to do with rotation, whereas the pelvis is the driver of human movement. There's not a move that we can't make that's not initiated in the middle of the body. And you hear a lot of people refer.
Oh, you might have got a phone call.
You hear a lot of people referring to ground force, but ground force doesn't start at the feet. It starts in the middle of the body, because if we were standing still and asked you to say, hey, let's put some force into the ground, you couldn't make that move without the initial move starting in the middle of the body, working down and rebounding back up. So how I look at the middle, it's more like a fuse box. No matter how much I try to use the legs or how strong I am, if I can't transfer that energy and connect it to the upper body, all is lost. And there's a lot of studies now, and it's just showing that the more efficient that you can move, the more mobility, the greater stability and control that you have of the pelvis. Obviously, the distal segments, such as the arm, they're going to work more efficiently too, because really at the end of the day, in a rotational sport such as baseball, your arm, it's at the mercy of the hips. And that's the area that I see so many guys struggle, because it's never a focus. Everybody's either focusing on the arm or they're focusing on the leg. And it just creates a lot of problems. And then you think about our method of teaching. You know, we play a rotational sport. We're born to rotate, yet how many rotational cues can you guys think of right off the top of your head? It's really difficult. We use so many linear cues, such as reach out, get extension. And that's a lot of the problem that you see with movement and mechanics, is just confusion. They're man-made. It's not how the body would ever naturally organize itself had the player not been confused.
Very interesting stuff right there. I loved the explanation on what you were saying with the moving the center and the pelvis, and because he and I go back and forth a lot of times about the ground force and the different things that we talk about, and where the brain processes and what you're trying to do with your body and things from there. And I love that what you said about the linear thing, because that's something that he and I go back and forth at all and all the time. Because
well, as soon as I say, because I like maybe like 6 weeks ago, this is actually when you reached out to me. I was upstairs in the office, and I had done some sort of thing saying, like, you know, rotation is the primary mover. And I know that Driveline has made that thing, but as soon as I say that, then people are like, oh, well, then you mean this. And they assume something that is very negative when I say that. And like the conclusions that people jump to as soon as I say that, I don't know. So it partly made me realize that we need to do a better job describing it. But also that we can't, that if people are not willing to listen and they're only going to hear us a certain way, there's really nothing that we can do. So I also appreciate that I hear you talking about all of the negative cues out there. So how it seems to me that you are using the belt to eliminate a lot of the cueing, and that what I just described is that if we rely on only the way that we talk about it, the way that you were just talking, Lance, like you're very articulate, very intentional of the way that you're talking about it, but then you have people that are not invested in listening in the same way that you're invested in describing things. So in this world that we're living in, like your belt seems to be eliminating a lot of the need for us to rely on our lack of ability to communicate. Am I articulating that well?
You're absolutely right. To me, the body speaks, and the body's native language is feel. The body understands feel. It's how it communicates. And until a player can actually feel what you're asking him to do, he's never going to truly understand it. So an example of this is each year when kids would come into one of my 3-day programs, I would ask a common cue, such as stay back. I would ask the entire, there's 20 kids in the camp, hey guys, what does stay back mean to you? But don't say it. I want you to write it down. And then I would have them turn in the piece of paper, and how many different answers do you think that we had for stay back? There were roughly 18.
Every one of them?
Yeah, there were roughly 18 or 20 different answers. But the problem is that when I asked those players, do you know what stay back means? Everybody in the room raised their hand thinking they did. However, everybody thought of it being as something totally different. So that's why you run into problems. Hey, stay back. I did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. My dad can beat up your dad. You know, so that's what it really runs into, because
Great.
At the end of the day, unless a player can actually feel it and process it and put it in his own words, he's just going to constantly rely on the coach. And that's when you get that, how'd that one look? How'd that one look? So pretty soon you start to look at pitching mechanics. It's almost like a Victoria's Secret's runway model with cat calls and whistling. And I think she's prettier and she's prettier. But nobody's ever on the page. So really the ultimate goal is just become your own coach. And unless you can actually feel your delivery, you've got tangible, concrete proof, it's just really hard to go back to it. And then also I kind of look at feel as GPS markers. Once the body can feel it, it can go back to it, and it just kind of navigates its course that way.
So the feel thing I want to talk more about. You're saying so many great things. My brain is having a hard time processing all of it. John, jump in. Somebody come in, and then I'll think about what I want.
But here's something I thought that you right away, and this is key. And you mentioned brain twice. Like that's where it starts with. It starts with the mind or the brain, and really feel like when you start to think about the hips and how they work, especially in our culture, where we're sitting all day, we're watching TV. Kids aren't riding bikes or skateboards, especially in the South where I come from. That was one of the big reasons why we came out here. People look at me like I'm crazy. Is the big reason is when I would come out here for business, I had to slow down through neighborhoods because kids were actually playing outside. They're riding skateboards or riding bikes. In the South, it wasn't like that. So what we're really with the cues and today's traditional method of coaching is we've disconnected the mind-muscle connection. And I call that's what I refer to as proprioception. That's just feel, it's kinesthetic awareness. And if you'll look at most guys that'll come into programs, these programs, 3-day programs, about 85 to 90% can't perform a simple hinge because they're not aware of their middle. And so that's another reason for the belt. As we pressure the hips, it works as compression. It grabs the brain's attention and lets it know exactly what's important. And that's the problem with so many guys is they can't feel their middle because they're not ever using it. And so you see so many guys that move as one piece and they don't rotate very well. It all comes back because of that disconnection. There's not a mind-muscle connection. But once you establish that mind-muscle connection, that's when you start to see a lot of improvement, because we talk about, when I think of pitching mechanics, I look at it this way. Pitching mechanics are nothing but a series of sub-movements. That's all they are. And it starts with pitching mechanics being, we're trying to take these sub-movements and we're trying to synchronize these into motion. However, most guys can't coordinate even the most basic movements with the hips because they don't have the proprioception levels or the mind-muscle connection. So that's where we start, is establishing the mind-muscle connection. And then we just start to break it into small movements. And once they can control those, then we start to put those into motion. And that's what we call pitching mechanics.
I love that.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
You said something. I know he's got something too.
No, I got it now. Taylor's my backup here.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
You were talking about the yips, and I've actually, fortunately and unfortunately, witnessed probably 10 guys get the yips. And one of the most significant ones was my play catch partner in JUCO. And it started with a weird thing that I've never heard before, and he could not throw a baseball inside. And it was one of those things where the mind took over, like you were talking about. It was a rainy day. I went to University of West Florida. And and so super, super rainy day. We get canceled. We got a big thing. Coach wants to throw bullpen. So we go over to this other baseball facility. We go in there, and he was riding with me. And literally we get out of his car, and he goes, "Hey, man, I can't throw inside." And I went, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, I just can't throw inside." And I go, "What do you mean you can't?" And he goes, "Well, I just had a bad experience." And he said, "I don't want to go into it." And I was like, "All right, no big deal." So of course I make a mental note when his bullpen time comes up. I'm going to go, all right, I'm going to go watch this guy. And so I'm watching him, and he warms up into a net, which is the first time I'd even seen that. I didn't even process like throwing into a net yet. Like that's something I'd never even seen online or anything. And this is where I'm 33. So this is way back in 2008, something like that. And so he starts just shuffle fire and chucking the ball into the net, right, before any catchers or anything. And our coach is kind of looking at him kind of weird. Then he proceeds to get on the mound at the very top. And the very first throw he makes, he throws a 92-mile-an-hour fastball about 3 feet in front of his front foot, plant foot, and bounces it straight to the ceiling. And I go, what is going on? Like, everybody's looking at him, and our coach kind of gets on him. And this kid had never thrown 96 before, but hits 96, skipping balls off the turf and beats up 2 catchers. And he's literally just and he's shaking his head every time. And like, our coach is going with the obvious sarcastic coaching that we ridicule all the time, where he's trying to like get him to get out of his skin, but it's obviously not working. And he's just trying to like poke fun of the guy. And you can see he's just nosediving, getting worse. And the kid just walks off, like literally just walks off. And that was the moment that pretty much ended his baseball career. Like, that moment, he had one more start like the next week and proceeded to go Rick Vaughn, like 12 straight balls, and gets pulled out. And just, I feel bad for the guy, you know. And I talked to him years later, and I'm like, dude, what happened? He goes, well, you know, I overthrew one time in a gym, and it went through a window and then hit somebody in the head. And then, like, you know, that was in the outside of this gym. And so it just created this big thing with me. And I tried to tell coach, and he just didn't care. You know, and then all he did was just ridicule me the whole time. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, this isn't that hard. You can throw all day and stuff like that. And just turned into a really bad situation. For you, what's the worst yip situation you've ever seen?
There's a couple of things here's something I've noticed with the yips. And, you know, I've played at junior college, and then I coached at Lipscomb. So let me tell you a little bit. First of all, I started off in a junior college in Central Kentucky. Let's just say it wasn't an academic school. We actually had 2 players get into a fight one time on the field at practice because one said that Abraham Lincoln's beard was still growing. The other one disagreed, so they fought about it. But the cool part was, I told our head coach, at least they were talking about history. Let's just leave it at that. So that shows you how smart some of those guys were. And then I go to Lipscomb, and this is a much more academic crowd. You know, we got the kind of kids that are taking tests that only have one question on them. So these are some academic kinds. And so what I noticed was, in junior college, I never really had many kids with the yips. It wasn't until I got to the academic kids, the overthinkers, the analyzers, that I was introduced to the yips. And I've started to figure out, I've never noticed a dumbass that ever had the yips. It was always the smart kids. It was always the kids that were doing everything the coach asked them to do that suffered from the yips. So what I found, I think, so much with the yips is, number one, is they can't feel the difference between good or bad. But number two, they've got this block that they're scared that something bad is going to happen. So I think it's really cool what you just said. My process when I'm starting with a kid, before I will ever assess them physically, we've got a series of questions that we'll ask these guys. That number one is, if your career came down to one pitch, what would that pitch be? And the reason why I would want to know that is because, let's say it's a changeup. If he believes it's his best pitch, what do you think he's going to do? That's something he's going to practice all the time. That's something that probably got him out of some big situations. So there's an emotional attachment. And because he's performed this over and over with such a high value emotionally and such a high value in reward, his delivery is going to be patterned to throw the best changeup. So you're going to see the changeup guy that's going to be a little bit more linear. He's going to be a little bit more passive versus the guy that might say, hey, I want a fastball up and in, or hey, I'm a guy that can throw a 12-6, because those 12-6 guys, if you've noticed that, anybody that throws an overhand curveball, they think they can throw that every pitch. It doesn't matter. You can't hit the curveball, because you think with the curveball early on, most hitters struggle with anything moving. So they've had a high level of success. It's a pitch that they probably learned on their own because they had success. They were more willing to practice it because they practiced it. They were better at it because they practiced on their own. They were self-taught. So it's almost like this pitch is their baby. So if you go in and you just watch a delivery and you see that it's not pleasing to your eyes, I think you've got to first start off with, what are they trying to do? What do they do most consistently? Because that's going to explain the patterns that you're seeing versus just jumping in and changing somebody because it's not pleasing to your eyes. So knowing what their strengths are and what they believe their strengths are is very, very important. So I think that's where we always start. And I'd recommend that for everybody, is get to know the person first, then start to assess the player, his ability, and then finally it's the pitcher, which would be the skill level. But we've got a 3-step process. It's person, player, then the pitcher. But to answer your question about the yips, most often if a guy struggles with the yips, like say he can't throw it inside, what we're going to do is we're going to practice throwing it inside, and we're going to practice throwing it outside, and often over-exaggerate just so they can feel the difference, because most often they just can't feel the difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. The two things you said right there that were pretty awesome. One, we have it on two. We have two different shirts that we have that. Number one, don't think, just throw, and that's a funny thing that you said with right there, because you never seen a dumbass throw. Like thinking. That's hilarious, because that's why I started that whole concept. Don't think, just throw. And then the other one we have on there is live or die by your best pitch, which is exactly what we're saying with that. And Cutternation is actually a smokescreen for me, which is really funny. It was a joke that was started by my catcher when I played in the Pecos League way back in the day, where we had a team come up to us in the middle of the game, or I'm sorry, after the game, and two guys were questioning whether I threw 55 sliders or 55 cutters. And they were like, we don't know, but it's a bet. So can you solve this? And my catcher jumped in, because he's from Alabama, and you know this phrase very well, save a nation. And he was all about it, and he just took it. And I said I was going to steal it, because he was like, nah, baby, Cutternation. And I was like, I'm going to have that. That's mine.
So it's funny that you say what pitch, because you also said, like, I don't know if I heard this correctly, but about the changeup, like he's typically going to then, like, his mechanics will reflect that idea, right? You said more linear, a little bit more passive. And I've been just learning so much from John. I'm a slider breaking ball guy, so I will come across like this. And we talk about it all the time. I just cut myself off, and I don't need to, but that makes so much sense to me. So from my perspective, personally, like, I need to understand these things before I'm willing. Like, when you say those things to me, I'm now able to take that and understand better what I'm already doing. And then I'm more likely to listen to you, right? So you talking about the person, the player, than the pitcher, like, goodness, that's brilliant. So thank you very much for sharing that.
I'm going to go live too and say with Taylor, what is your, like, if you take his question right there, what's your best pitch?
Honestly, I just learned it 2 weeks ago, and I'd say it's the cutter, honestly. I was always a guy that kind of like relied on movement, and, my slider was always my best pitch. And then just learning the cutter, I feel like I have a lot more control with it. It's just something that, you just have to be comfortable with it. And like you said, you got to practice it. You get comfortable with it. You almost self-teach yourself, doing stuff in the mirror, kind of like getting that feel down. And then obviously, like, it only took me like 2 weeks, but I think it's like my favorite pitch to throw.
Yeah, with him, we got the cutter, and we did live ABs last week, right?
Yes.
And I had been telling him, I was like, I love a front door cutter to a righty. I just don't see it that much. It's such an aggressive pitch. It's so late, but it's also really fun to throw. And so, like, I told him, I said, if you hit him, who cares? Like, that's our biggest thing. Like, if you miss, you can't react. Who cares? And he came out first cutter inside and spotted it. And then he's sitting there laughing on the mound, going like, that was fun. I'm like, no, I know, right? It's fun to throw that pitch, right?
Yeah. That's awesome, man. It's just, it goes back to just, what do you believe? What do you believe in? And just really, really sticking to that, because you know how it goes. You become what you believe. And if you've got a successful pitch, that's why it's so important to know the person first, because too often, and it drives me crazy, is that, you'll see these video reviews on social media or wherever, and they're comparing them to big leaguers. What does it? I can't even sign my same. I would challenge anybody listening. How many times have you guys written your name, signed your name? Thousands and thousands of times, right? And that's a skill that requires you sitting down. There's no pressure. There's not anybody on base. There's not life or death. Nobody's watching. And you can't even repeat your same signature the same way twice, even though you've done it 10,000 times. But yet we're asking you to pitch and look exactly like Tim Lincecum. Yeah, genius. Let's do that. You can't even sign your own damn name the same way twice, but I'm sure you can repeat billions of freaking neuromuscular firings in under a second the same way Timmy can.
So you had said something. Yes, thank you. You had said something earlier, though, about other coaches, about being your own coach. And I have met so many people, and I am so guilty of this, of just regurgitating the things that we hear. And some things that I think John and I pride ourselves on is our ability to differentiate ourselves from other people, but also recognize when we are stealing from others. So can you talk more about maybe, I don't know if it's personally or just maybe what you're seeing as far as not everybody, many people out there are just simply spitting other information that they've heard on social media or something along those lines. I think you know what I mean.
Yes. Hold on one second, guys. Hold on one second.
Sure.
Sorry,
We'll be right here.
Yeah, we can talk for a second. Taylor, so I'm excited. You think your cutter's your best pitch? That's I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got an interview right now.
It's the feel of the fastball.
Sorry about that, guys. All right, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. That was the door guy.
That's all right. Taylor was telling us about that. He said that his cutter was his best pitch, and I wanted to know because that was new information to me. And that, being a cutter guy, that was kind of, because when guys come in with this, we it sounds like our philosophy, help me out, Cass, is very similar to what he's talking about with a lot of things,
Right.
and we're just trying to create the nastiest version of that pitcher.
Yes.
Like whatever he does, and that's one of the big reasons why we need to get the Rapsodo unit. Is because we got the floor unit coming in soon. I'm super pumped about it because we have a screen right next to the mound, and the ability to do that slow motion and pair that data and that information with why the slider or the cutter is moving for what it is according to where the hand placement is on release and everything, that kind of really helps our guys understand whether they're okay, so you messed it up and it moved like this, and this is your spin rate, and your hand was here or there or whatever it was, And so, sorry, my wife just like walked
Crawled
under.
under. Yeah.
She's a trooper. I love that girl.
Here's
I
a
love that
topic,
girl.
and you mentioned this with slow motion. We're talking about video analysis and mechanics. This is something that drives me absolutely crazy. I'm not a big fan of slow motion video because it doesn't show the actual tempo and rhythm.
Well, we look at both, by the way. We look at both. We do real time, and then we slow it down.
Yeah.
So we can actually see exactly what happens. But yeah, I agree with you on
Keep
both
going.
of those. Go ahead.
And one thing that I found is that whenever that you're talking about shaping a new pitch, we always videotape from the center field so we can actually track ball flight. We're not ever worried about mechanics because I'm just a believer that the reason you don't throw strikes has nothing to do with your mechanics. The reason you don't throw strikes is because you think it's your mechanics. And so what I have found is that over and over again, the guys that I would notice that watched a ton of video from the side struggled to throw strikes. And the reason was because they're focusing on every single movement, every single position. And those are positions we could never repeat. So their focus is on the wrong things. And so that's why I'm not a fan of the slow motion side view. And during the season, we never watch video from the side. It's always from the center fielding because we want to watch ball flight and how the hitter reacts to the pitch.
I just thought of this. I love that you said that. It also is really hard to find good video of like that. So I literally just had this thought last night. I should just quit trying to find side video because it's harder to find. And there's endless video from center field. Endless.
Yes.
So it's just easier for me to give people some context from that angle. So
I totally agree, Lance, too, because we get people DMing us all the time. Hey, will you check out my mechanics? And they'll send me a side view and to like go on a little bit further for what you say. And I say all the time too. I was like, I don't know what this means because I don't know where the ball is going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like what you were saying. Like I think that everything that you do directly affects where the ball goes. Your timing, your tempo, everything that goes with that. And so like the center field view with the hand and everything, like we are tucked in behind them with the camera only in the window of the arm and release what we're doing with the pitch stuff to be able to help them see what their hand is actually doing with the baseball. Similar to kind of like how Driveline does their stuff too, just a little bit more DIY the way we do it here. But I totally agree with that all the time. I said, people send us stuff and I just say, I don't know because I don't know where it's going. Like your mechanics don't mean anything to me because we, like, as you probably say with like the big leaguers, but like you can watch Blake Snell throw all day. And some people would say like, that's the worst mechanics I've ever seen. But then when you see the center field view, it's 96 on the black and a blade coming right after that. And like, how in the world can you say that this is bad mechanics? And I've seen people make that argument all the time about
it does. It's like I like a Ford Mustang. I like a Chevy Corvette. I like a Ford Mustang. It's like little kids arguing. It's just perception. And there's no such thing as perfect mechanics. Perfect mechanics are the ones that you can repeat consistently, that you feel good, that can get that's perfect mechanics to me. But everybody wants to go back to mechanics are so overrated. I can't stress that enough. I just think there's way too much. Everything is blamed on. We're a bunch of pitching mechanics. Miss high, it's because your mechanics. My arm hurts, it's because your mechanics. My velocity is down, it's because mechanics. No, maybe it's because you drove through McDonald's, you stayed up all night playing Fortnite, and you suck today. It has nothing to do with your mechanics. And that's just the stuff that we run into. Everybody wants to talk about velocity and gains. They want us to talk about weighted balls, and they want to talk about mechanics. Well, what about eating? What about sleeping? What about hydration? What about eliminating the stress? Because that's where it comes from. It's all from the nervous system and the brain just responding. But everybody wants to go to the body and they want to point out or highlight specific positions because the guy does it, then you do that, and you can have the success of that guy. So when it comes to the mechanics, man, that's just stuff that I think most of the mechanical flaws you see are man-made. It's not how it would never naturally organize itself. And it's our emphasis on mechanics to where we've got a whole generation of pitching addicts that they're constantly saying, how'd that one look? And the guy says, oh, that's great. Then they go to the next coach. How'd that one look? Oh, that sucks. So they're constantly changing back and forth. There's no feel. There's no awareness. And they're just constantly at the mercy of an instructor.
Right. And so I want to go back to what my question was essentially like, maybe this is a better way to say it. What do you tell them? Because this is where I came from. I didn't have somebody like John until I got here. I didn't have the resources like this. And the things that you're telling me, I would have eaten up. But my point is that I will eat up anything. And it's just occurring to me as I just turned 30 that probably my authentic, genuine, organic thoughts are as valuable, if not more valuable, than by watching the people that have the platform on social media, that have the audiences there, because I am just extremely guilty of just, if you have a platform and you have 30,000 followers, there's a really good chance I'm going to believe what you're saying. And so most of what you are saying is not what people are talking about in general in the industry. Would you agree with that? And then what would you say to somebody I started out full time at this. When I was 23 years old, I said, I'm not going to have a real job. I want to be in baseball for the rest of my life. And all I have been is a sponge, and I've just absorbed some things that I wish I wouldn't have absorbed as a coach.
Absolutely. And social media is killing so much of pitchers because you've got these guys that have no experience. They're just regurgitating. I call those guys parrots. They're just repeating what Polly Wants to Crocker said.
But they're trying to, you know.
Yes. And it's just that you can just get overloaded with information. So my suggestion, and I always tell guys this, is that when you see something and maybe it's new to you, reach out and ask, well, why do you say that? Well, because of this. Okay, great. But why do you say that? If you'll continue with the why, eventually you're going to figure out, is this right for you? Or is this guy just regurgitating information? Does he get pissed off? If he gets pissed off, obviously you've called him and he doesn't really know how to answer that question. So his depth of knowledge might not be as deep as what we're looking for. But yeah, with social media, man, there's just so much out there that you could get overloaded. And that's where it's led to, is that it's so easy to push a button on Google or to search it that kids don't trust their instincts. They feel like there's somebody always smarter than themselves. So they're always pushing that instant gratification button, and there's no trial and error for development. And really, that's what development's all about. It's not about eliminating failure. It's about limiting the amount of times that you fail. And with any and all of that, I think it starts with just asking questions. Whether to me, when I'm working with a kid, I'm going to ask 4 times the question he's going to ask me. Instead of telling him, I'm going to ask him. It's going to be more of a guided discovery process. And I think the same has to hold true for the kids too, is to understand why. Here's a question I've got for you guys. You guys don't have kids yet, but I don't know of, but we've got.
Neither do I.
Okay. We've got 4 kids. All we're missing is a wood panel station wagon, and we'd be headed off to Wally World. So that's the Wheelers. But one thing I've noticed with my kids is that with the babies like that, they're constantly asking why. Like, there's a fire truck there. Like, Dad, why is the fire truck there? They must have burnt down the kitchen. Why did he burn down the kitchen? They're always asking why. But at what point do kids start asking how and stop asking why? And that's really the problem. They want to be told how to do it rather than the trial and error process of figuring it out on their own and why it works or starting there.
I love that because I think we try to address that a little bit with, a lot of the throws that we make with our guys that they're doing stuff, especially when they're doing some of our drills. We have a radar gun that give them feedback for what they're trying to feel, because we're really trying to teach them that feel. Like, you do one of our K drills or you do something and then they move a certain way, and then we will ask them, okay, so why did it go up right there? Or why did it go down? Like, why do you think? What is your opinion of that situation? Because we are trying to speak in their own personal brain language, right? Taylor, would you agree with that? That we do that a lot with, especially with you? And it's so funny that we said yips too. And I just thought about when Taylor and I played catch for the very first time. And he threw a ball. And do you remember what you said, Taylor? And where it went? The very first throw?
Like at your ankles or
Yeah, it was like completely overpronated release, threw a fastball changeup, went all the way down by my ankle. And then as I caught it, before I could even say, hey, man, no big deal, he immediately prefaced it with, I can't ever play catch close. And I was like, all right, hold on. Let's just start over here. Let's go back to the basics, and let's talk about why you don't think you can. You're a professional pitcher, and you don't think you can throw the ball 20 feet. Let's talk about that,
Yeah. Here's the thing, and when we're talking about feel, we're talking about development. I think the fuel to development is contrast. I think that if I'm working on a new, like say for an example, you've got a guy that he bounces the ball. Well, what I'm going to do, or a guy that comes in after the game, he struggled with missing the breaking ball high. What we're going to do, we're going to practice missing that pitch on purpose. We're going to miss it high, then we're going to go low, just so we can establish parameters for the brain to tell the difference between good or bad. And I think the problem with feel is too often we try to tell guys what to feel rather than asking them what they feel. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter unless they understand they can put it in their own words, because if not, they're always going to be at the mercy of the coach and somebody else's opinion.
Yeah, and I've thought this like 7 times, and so I should say it. So I have been making this statement lately to kids. Like, I feel like most people prioritize coaches, what they think. And I go, you need to immediately, like we need to teach our players to prioritize what they think and what they feel and actually believe it. So a big buy-in. I mean, that's why I was just those 3 things that you talked about, the person and the player, like you have to start there, because it's not about us. And we don't even let kids call us coach for that reason.
Thank you. That's
right.
The rule I've got at Palooza, by the way, is no coach bombs. It's first name only. Forget the coach. And that's one way. If you want to know if somebody's full of shit, they'll introduce themselves as coach to you.
I know. And again, this is coming back because I am so much of the things that you are talking about, because I didn't have any other influences, right? So I thought it was weird. I mean, I have a unique name, so people often call me Cass anyway, but when I was coaching Division III baseball, like they started calling me coach more often, and I just let it happen because all of the people around me were letting it happen, and it didn't feel right. And then I normalized it. So one of the things that I have really been experiencing is that I was letting, you talked about continuing to ask why, and I allowed so many red flags I ignored so many red flags, and I don't know, because I was trying so hard, and now it becomes so obvious that I actually I have a very good sense of what is good and bad. And I think most people do, but they don't have a good sense of how much they need to be listening to themselves. So
absolutely trusting their instincts. Yeah, we've coached the instincts out of players.
Yeah.
We tell a lot of our guys the same thing, especially and he's I don't know, this is the first time you hear it when I told him about the fine. So like I was told, I've never played affiliated ball, but through some big leaguers that I played with, if you use the word coach to a manager or anybody right there, it's like a $10,000 fine. Like it's so extreme that they don't, like, you will be massively. Taylor, help me out with that. Is that
even in the minor leagues?
Yeah, even in the minors. If you say it, like it's nope. Start signing it. You got to start writing that check.
We're podcasting with Kerry Lightenberg. Do you know him?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, so Kerry Lightenberg he was the closer for the Braves in the late 90s.
Yeah.
He worked at Nevers Larkin Baseball, where I coached in Minnesota. Whatever. I don't even know how to say it now. I can't say coach. But I always was like, hey, what's up, coach? He's like, don't call me coach. And I just kept calling him coach because I'm a douche sometimes. But now that I'm hearing that, it's funny because he coaches for the St. Paul Saints in the American Association.
Okay,
so
cool. Yeah, but that's one of my rules. I always tell guys, if you've got somebody that shows up in your email inbox and they're referring to themselves in third person as coach, please hit the unsubscribe button as quickly as you can.
Okay,
we
love that.
We talk about it all the time.
So,
I hate it also because my point to it is we are all equal. We're all baseball players, and we want you to understand that, like, nobody is above anybody else. Like, you're here, our 7-year-olds is just as valuable as our 24-year-olds pro guys. Like, we just want you to understand that we're here to help you as best as we can in our best way. So we don't want you to feel like that you have to do it a certain way or it's that. Like, we were trying to get you to feel what we were trying to get.
Absolutely. I love that.
Can you, what do you think about us having everything radar gun? Do you do that? Is that something that you agree with, or what are your thoughts on having a radar gun on display at all times? Because many people have come at us on this, and we feel strongly about it, but want to hear your opinion.
Oh, absolutely. Sooner or later, you're going to be judged by the gun, whether you like it or not. And usually the people that don't like the gun are the guys that don't throw hard.
That's it. Should we just stop right there?
Yeah, that was a great answer. That was a phenomenal answer.
Yeah, and to me, like, especially with the younger kids, like with my little boy, he just turned 9 a couple of days ago, and I've never given him one piece of instruction, never one cue, ever, simply because I know what it does to the body and the perception. So with him, it was always about the intent. So the first thing that we had him do was, when he was about 2, we took this redneck swimming pool from Walmart. You know, those things you fill up in the water, and some guys will have Bush Light or whatever in it. But we had him throwing rocks at it, trying to break it. And then when he was about 4, we would break out the radar gun, and we would make it like a game, because whenever he would throw it harder, we would write it on the wall like a video game. So every time he'd throw the ball, he would try to throw it hard. So I was trying to develop his patterns from the outside in. And that's what you're going to see, is that guys that try to throw hard are going to have the patterns to throw the ball hard later, whereas so many guys want to think, hey, this is a skill game. So they focus on the strike, and you start, the strike zone, they start to create these linear pushing patterns because they're rewarded for success early, but then later on they don't have the patterns to be able to throw the ball hard. So to me, it's about ability before skill. And once they've got that level of ability, it's pretty easy to add skill to it. So I'm a big believer in the radar gun. And to me, man, that's going to be the player's best coach for so many.
Perceived effort is what we really like to say with it. Like, whatever you are doing, like we were saying about the cage roll and the other things that we do with stuff, it's like, how do you think you are moving? And then what is the actual feedback to you? And a lot of times that when we have our guys do our drills or, and they do stuff, Taylor's a big, he's very quiet when he gets into it. And I love that, because that just means he's inside his head trying to figure out, get things going on things. And, sometimes I'll throw with him too, and we'll go back and forth on stuff, and I'm trying to verbalize what's going on in my head so he knows what I'm thinking. Where, like, if we do a short box off the edge of the mound, or we do shuffle fires or whatever we're doing, I'll immediately say, like, ooh, I didn't like that. That didn't feel good. Or I felt like I was early, or, just trying to help him understand what's going on in my head. Not necessarily that he has to copycat the language, just so he understands that I'm processing immediately when the ball leaves my hand. And I'm trying to be like, I liked it, I didn't, or did you see that? What did you see? Like, things like that, trying to get him to understand that, like, hey, we throw differently, but we also don't throw differently. You know what I mean?
Oh, man, that's great. And here's something that I really love about that. You mentioned that you could feel it out of your hand. Well, I grew up in Kentucky, so basketball is religious. Kind of like in Southern California, how you have to have a dog. Out in Kentucky, you have to play basketball. So we grew up playing basketball constantly, and the only time we played baseball is when we didn't have, we didn't have enough where we couldn't find a basketball game. So with basketball, right away, how many of you guys out of you 3, as soon as you shoot it, can you feel the difference between it's good or bad? As soon as it leaves your hand. You guys know that?
Yeah. I grew up in the South.
Why is that, you think?
Well, because you're thinking about your hand and your shot.
What else you think?
I'm terrible at basketball. I'm the worst. I'm a hockey player. This is a bad question for me.
Right,
I got to step back.
I get it. You think, and most guys are going to say because of reps, but you think about basketball and how rich it is in sensory feedback. Number one, and this is why basketball, you have to make your throwing program like basketball. In basketball, there's one clear goal, physically and literally. Even the cheerleaders know what you're shooting at. The coaches know. Everybody's on the same page with one clear goal. So as you start to shoot, you get immediate feedback. You see whether it went in. You either win or you lose on that throw. You either win or you lose on that shot. There is no, unless it gets caught up in the rim, it just sticks there, right? So you get immediate feedback. You get the visual feedback. You got the sound of nothing but net or that cover your head break.
I want to know the guy that said, hey, what about the ball that gets stuck there? Because, right, did somebody just try to come at you against that analogy?
Yes. But like always.
Screw that guy.
No doubt. They're that guy. So with
always
basketball,
that guy. There's always that guy.
you've got that one clear goal. You can see it. You get the results immediately. You can hear it. And so that's how our brain processes everything is we've got a clear intention, and then we're gathering the feedback of what we see and what we hear. And because of that, you start to associate the feel of it leaving your fingers based on your prior results. So that's why you can feel it. It's the same way it's got to be with pitching. Have one clear goal, give immediate feedback. And that's why guys that struggle with command, one of my favorite things to do is put a loud sound to it. Because anytime there's a loud sound, the brain's going to grab its attention. And so it works almost like echo radar to where it starts to track back where it left your attention time and space.
That's the command trainer concept, yes?
No.
Tell me more.
We don't use the command trainer. We'll actually use pipe hands, and we'll use anything loud. And one of my favorite things, especially for younger kids, try to break something, whether it's glass, no matter what it is, because it's fun. And I always said the best bullpens are going to be the ones where you go down to the bullpen or out on the side and you take maybe a big bottle and you take different rocks and softballs, and you guys are out there competing. You're trying to break the bottle. Every rock's going to be a little bit differently. So if I'm missing high with the rock, I'm not going to think reach out, get extended. I'm just going to throw it lower. If I miss to the right, I'm going to aim to the left. So it takes the thinking out of it. You're competing. You're throwing it hard, because who wants to be the guy that hits the bottle, it doesn't break? So you're doing everything. You're focused, you're competing, you're throwing hard to a spot, you're getting feedback, you're making adjustments. And the best thing is that you're going to see that a lot of guys, their delivery will work better, because if you put a baseball in their hand, they go back to that learned association of what they're supposed to do. And as soon as you put a rock in their hand, there's no learned association. So the body naturally takes over. So you'll start to see more efficient mechanics.
And that, I'm so glad you're saying that. So I'm going to bring personally again, but these are some of the things, Lance, that I was doing right when I started doing instruction. Like, that was one of the first things intuitively I knew that. Like, why are you missing high? Or like, how do you not miss high is maybe how I would say it. And they would give me some ridiculous answer. I'm just like, why don't you just throw it lower? And I have been saying those things less because I've been worried about what other people in the industry are doing. And if I just rely on what actually makes sense to me as a human being and as a player, those have always been where my best coaching, my best coaching has always come from that. So I know this is a little bit personal, but I know that coaches are going to be watching this. And my goodness, I am so excited to hear some of the things that you're saying. So.
Yeah, it's just it. I mean, we live in the age now to where if I can confuse the hell out of you, wow, I must really know what I'm talking about. And that's what we do. We try to beat people over the head with these science sticks, and it's just crazy. I see some of this stuff out there, and it's just not right. But again, it just goes back to that overcoaching. And if I speak in a way that you don't understand, wow, I must be really good at what I do, because if it were that simple, you wouldn't need my help. So I better confuse the hell out of you.
I love that. He and I go over like our language all the time on what we're saying, and I feel like we're like a puzzle piece that kind of goes together with a lot of things that we go over and go through stuff. And we there's constantly times where we see something and we'll start talking, and he'll use this language and I'll use my language, and we're like separate from what's going on with things, and we got to go time out. We got to put this into the meeting because there's a concept that we need to discuss, or phrasing that somebody said was something on their own fields, and we're like, okay, we just need to talk about this at another time for what we're doing, but we don't want the athlete to get confused, because, especially with feel that you talk about, and when we go with our radar gun and a lot of our drills, like, we want them to process what they're doing. So we have them throw in groups, 2, 3, 4, 5, but we want them to be thinking about it, and then, we keep asking them these questions. There's 3 questions we go over after each throw. How did it feel? Was it fast? Did it go where you want to? And if you can get
the first one's no, nothing else matters.
Yeah, if any of those are a no, if any of them, right, are a no, then that wasn't necessarily a rep that you liked on any pitch that you're doing, Well,
like yesterday, I had one of my hardest throws when I was throwing, and it felt like shit. And I'm like, hey, you just saw the radar gun. It was a straight throw. It went where I wanted to go, but my shoulder exploded when I did it. Like, you guys don't see that, and coaches don't see that. So if I didn't tell you that, you would have no idea. So it is your job as the player to recognize that and be honest with yourself and tell us.
And it takes us a long time to create that barrier with a lot of our kids, especially we had a new client,
break
10-year-old.
down the barrier.
Break down the barrier. The new client yesterday, the little 10-year-old lefty came in and just asked him a simple question. Hey, how did that feel? Did you like it or did you not? And he said, well, I don't really know. And I said, okay, well, can you do it again? And I think he hit like 50 or 51 or something on like a shuffle fire. And I said, do you think you could try to do it better or like your best rep that you could, however you think you could? And so he goes out there and then obviously gets tighter and throws it slower. And then the ball goes up, And I said, okay, do you feel like that felt like the same as it did on the throw before that? And he said, no, it felt slow. And I said, well, do you feel like you squeezed your muscles in order for you to try to move stronger? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, so there's a little bit of a feel problem. The tightness does not create fast. You have to be able to stay loose. And for what we talk about is move your hands just a little bit faster with your body in order to create that speed. And then he ended up from 50 and ended at 55.
I love that process. And that's what I've always found, man. One common denominator that I've found with the coaches that I really respect and look up to is the best coaches are your questionnaires. They're not your know-it-alls. They're the guys who are just constantly asking questions. You got Scott Brown, Derek Johnson, Tony Robichaux, goodness gracious, James Ogden at Lipscomb. But all those guys, the one thing they have in common, Nate Yeske, is that they're constantly asking their players questions. And we use a 4-step process, and FEEL is actually an acronym. It stands for focus, explore, eliminate, learn. And so the first one is, what are you trying to do? What are your intentions? So, and I think that's why with video analysis, it's impossible to review video unless you're asking questions. You just don't know what they're trying to do, so you don't know if they did it or not.
Totally.
How do you know if you made the shot if you don't know where you were shooting? It's very common for me. It's almost like you're shooting at a basketball goal with no nets, and you've got the coach underneath it saying, hey, did that one go in? Yeah, I think so. It's kind of, there's just no feedback. So with ours, focus is number one. What are you trying to do? So we establish the goal. And then from there is explore, like however you can do it. If I'm working on a cutter, well, on this one, I'm going to put my thumb here. On this one, I'm going to put my middle finger just under the seam. I might take a pen and write that spot down. And so I've got the focus. What are you trying to do? How are you going to do it? And then we start to eliminate what didn't work. Well, that didn't work. That sucked. All right, let's start it back over. What are you going to try to do? I'm going to try to cut the ball. How are you going to do it? Well, this time I'm going to put my thumb here. All right, throw it. How did that work? Oh, that worked. All right, so we just learned. We moved to the fourth one. We just learned something with that association. So now we're going to take it like jambalaya, and we're going to add another little ingredient into it until we create a learned association or feel for that pitch.
I love that.
Do you guys know what jambalaya is?
Yeah.
Heard of it.
Heard of it? Heard of it. Oh, yeah.
I have a little southern
Yeah, I'm
cuisine
with
on
you.
it.
Okay.
BJ, by the way.
I have one last thing. We have about 5 minutes. We got to get to training guys at 11. I would love to do this again, by the way, because
we're
my
coming
goodness.
Up. Hey, we're in Huntington. We're coming up soon. All right, so we'll chat with you. I didn't realize you were this close. I knew the southern accent, so I assumed the south. I didn't realize you were an hour and 15 north.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Beverly Hillbillies.
we get this all the time, and we don't get it from our college guys because they know what the heck they know what they're seeing. They know what they're experiencing. And so this is a lot more for our younger players. We have a lot of people, especially between that, 9 years old to 13 years old, that feel that they need private instruction. And we just don't feel that's the best thing for many reasons. But I want to know.
Could you repeat that? They're working on that. I didn't hear what.
It's okay. So essentially, I'm just saying, can you talk about the idea of how should we create this environment? A lot of people, especially our younger players, their parents are looking for private instruction, and I can see where I can understand the argument, but there is a reason why we do small group instruction. It's financial, but a lot that's such a small part of it. It is not financial. It is primarily because I just don't see the private instruction happening in the world. Like, you don't go and you don't have a job and you don't have somebody just one-on-one with you the whole time. It's just not real to me. Do you have opinions on how kids should be consuming this content, and how should it be in a one-to-one setting? Should it be in a group setting? I hope you know what I'm asking.
Absolutely. No, I prefer the group setting because it's just a learning experience, man. You're seeing what others are doing. You're able to ask others questions on how they're doing it. But I think with it, it creates more of a synergy. Also, it allows you to compete, which raises the intensity in the room. And like you said, that's just how life is. But yeah, I really like the groups. The one-on-one, I think those kids get so reliant on.
That's my biggest argument right there.
Yeah, they do. And they're just waiting for feedback on every throw to let you know if that made the goal or not. So, and then what those guys do that really like the private instruction, they'll go to you, then they'll go to another guy that has a totally different opinion. Now they're like, well, where do I start? He said this, he said that. And so that I'm with you right there 100% as far as the group instruction is the way to go. And that's how I've always done it.
And what we see also too is like, if in a group setting, we can have a kid throw a ball and then we don't say anything because we want to see if he's going to fix it on the next one on his own. And then he's going to watch the next kid throw, watch that guy throw or whatever is going on. And then we may say something to him or we may not, just depending, on what we're saying, or even applaud him. Hey, great throw. Can you do that again? Or something like that. But in a private one-on-one setting, there's been many times, because I did it that way too until I transitioned, I don't know, probably a year ago with stuff. And if you don't say anything on one throw, now we have this awkward silence between the parent, the player, and everything from there. And now you feel obligated to say something. Otherwise, the way we're at a gym, and there's loud music. There is everybody has to kind of talk, but you can see, like you were saying, the synergy. I like that word of the group setting, especially with like our pro guys and our college guys, where like Taylor's one of our most talented arms that we have in there, and these college guys are literally talking about him while he's throwing. And that's where we see like, oh, wow, look at what he's kind of doing here differently than what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Because what you're creating with that one-on-one is they're just so addicted to coaching that as a coach, they're just waiting on every throw for you to tell them to make some type of adjustment. Because if you don't say anything, they think you're not coaching. So whenever you get it in a group like that, you start to take some of that away. But then they see other guys, and nobody wants to be the beta male. Everybody wants to be the alpha male. And so that also starts to create a better understanding of intent to try to throw hard or doing something else because they don't want to be the last man in the room.
I appreciate everything. We gotta end it right now.
This has been unbelievable, Lance. It's amazing for really what the information that you've been putting out there, and I can't wait to get up there in Huntington. Taylor, you want to add anything in there?
I mean, it's my first podcast with some great baseball minds and everything, and I enjoyed listening to everything you had to offer, so I appreciate that.
Well, appreciate it, guys. Yeah, this is fun, man. Just let me know. I'd love to have you guys up here.
Oh, for sure. We'll definitely 1,000% be up there, especially since an hour. I'm sure Taylor will tag along too, right?
If people want to know more about you, I subscribe to your email. Can you tell us more ways to find more about you?
Yeah. You can go to baseballthinktank.com and just enter your email there. I'm on Twitter @Lantz Wheeler, and now it's spelled differently. It's Lantz. Nobody's ever spelled my name right the first time. So, and then at Instagram on @LanceWheeler25.
Got it.
We'll be posting it on our social media after we get everything put together. So be looking at that on our pages. So.
Can't thank you enough, Lance. It's really nice to meet you. I can't wait to shake your hand in person. Could you tell us, you run the Baseball Think Tank too, right?
Yes.
Okay, so when is the next one on that? Where is it? How can they get the information? I'm sure it's on your website.
Yeah, that's on the website. And then you're referring to Pitch-a-Palooza, which
Pitch-a-Palooza, yes.
Yeah, that's the seminar I hold each December. And it was attended last year by all but one Major League Baseball organization. I think we had over 500 coaches. But the cool part about that is, number one, you're not allowed to introduce yourself as coach. You're not allowed to wear any sweater vests or softball visors. It's just about a group of guys that go for literally 4 days long. They're just talking baseball the entire time.
That's awesome.
That's brilliant.
That's awesome, dude.
Sweater vests.
So when's the next one?
It will be in the second week of December in Nashville.
It's in Nashville.
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome.
Right before ABCA.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a couple weeks before ABCA and 1 week always the 1 week prior to the MLB winter meetings.
Okay, that's good to know. That's awesome. All right, well, we got another thing on the calendar. So, all right, well, that's great. Lance, like I said, I appreciate it. Everybody go out, follow Lance. Awesome baseball mind. Didn't realize he was in Huntington, so we will definitely be up there real soon. That's not even that far away. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our apparel and the other stuff. And if you want to learn how to throw hard with either Lance or us, definitely come over and do it. Oh, and we'll talk about that on another time. But Casey Mize, like, great job, like, man, phenomenal. Like,
And I'll be the first to say I had absolutely nothing to do with that. I've worked with Casey a few times, and one of his friends, Gunnar Leger, which is to me probably the best college pitcher I've ever seen. And he's just one of those guys that he just competes in empty rooms, man. He's going to do it, whatever it's got to take. He's just a unique individual, and you know what? He's going to have the best way to put it this way. He's got a Verlander arm with the character of Gandhi.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. It's always good to see good baseball people that put in the work and then can really get to it. And it's not like, people that know that this is not a luck process. Like I've never met a lucky pitcher that has made it to the show. Like I've played with a ton of lucky pitchers who throw 105 pitches in 4 innings and give up no runs, but I've never met one that has actually made it to the big leagues. So
have you ever noticed this? The worst pitchers always have the worst coaches, and the worst students always have the worst teachers. I just still can't figure that out.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thanks again, man. We really appreciate it. Guys, don't forget, keep doing your stuff. Let us know if you have any questions about anything. Don't forget, last thing, throw hard.
All right. Thank you very much.